Subterfuge has been a part of the way humans play around since video games even existed, with plenty of card and dice games revolving around lying and getting away with it. Or not, if you're not sneaky enough. This in mind, there's always been a market for video games where you're duplicitous throughout, which is why games like Hitman have been such long-time successes. But it's still more than a little weird when a game insists that you lie in order to continue the plot. While this generally leads to a new, stealth-based mechanic that you may not have been expecting, sometimes you do just have to straight up lie to someone, or yourself, because the alternate is turning off the game. Lying in a game isn't immoral, of course, but you can still often feel a little weirdly guilty or uneasy when you do so, even if you spent the rest of said game killing and menacing people indiscriminately. But hey, we've all had to lie to our loved ones about not being a sea creature at some point, right? Right? I am definitely not an octopus, Kirsten Ria from WhatCulture Gaming, and these are 10 video games that make you lie to win. Number 10, We Happy Few. For anyone who hasn't played We Happy Few, it basically covers the dealings of 3 protagonists, Arthur, Sally, and Ollie. Each of the protagonists has their own unique issues to deal with, but where Ollie is open about not taking the mood-controlling drug Joy, making him an outcast from the civilized parts of society, Arthur and Sally are actively hiding the fact that they are also off their joy. As such, you spent a considerable part of your gaming experience doing everything you can to look just like you're another inhabitant of Wellington Wells, and not someone who is aware that this drugged up society is a proverbial powder keg about to blow. Whilst trying to escape, you are stuck looking normal when you're around others, meaning you can't run, you should greet everyone you can, and you need to be dressed in your Sunday finest despite the fact that you're in a borderline apocalyptic dystopia. Oh, and if you're Sally, you also need to lie about not having had a baby who you are currently hiding in your flat. It's a great time all around. Number 9, Papers, Please. Now, in Papers, Please, you don't technically have to lie, it's just that if you never lie at all during your playthrough, you're almost definitely going to get a bad ending. This is because the minute that you hand the inspector the papers that you got handed from that mysterious organisation on day 12, he will immediately arrest you, ending your game. As such, you're stuck half lying to both EZIC, the mysterious organisation, and your own government, as you decide which you'll ultimately side with as political conflict increasingly escalates. Unfortunately, this means that your life gets increasingly complicated as you have to balance lying to the side that you aren't going to support with making sure that they don't realise and kill you, all the while making enough money scanning passports to make sure that your family have food, medicine, and electricity. Worse yet, even after all of this, you can still manage plenty of bad or unhappy endings, because navigating the life of a passport inspector is actually surprisingly difficult, especially when seemingly everyone is set out to arrest or kill you. Number 8, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Legend of Jack Sparrow. As anyone who's seen the films can attest, Jack Sparrow is not the most honest and upstanding member of society. He's not exactly a bad dude, just one who would definitely embellish a story to make himself sound better or cooler where he could. And he does exactly that in the course of the Legend of Jack Sparrow game, repeatedly making things up like giant spiders in order to sort of impress the player. What makes this funny is that throughout the course of the game, various characters will actively call Jack out on his lies, but you'll still end up fighting all sorts of weird and wonderful imaginary beasties anyways. To be fair, the Pirates of the Caribbean series has always delved into the world of the supernatural, so it's not as though these creatures don't fit into the universe, but it's pretty funny to have Sparrow so caught up in the tale that he's weaving that he basically rewrites the story of the first film, with you having to play along in order to continue through the game. Number 7, Kindergarten. In Kindergarten, you play as a small child who eventually uncovers a plot of child abduction, genetic experimentation, and significant amounts of murder. Every single adult in the game is not only not going to help you, but will kill you at the slightest provocation, so you can't exactly go to them for assistance. As such, foiling the evil plot going on at the school and saving the missing child Billy requires you to pick up a questionable talent, the ability to lie to grown adults. In order to avoid getting straight up murdered by a teacher or janitor, you need to lie through your teeth, and occasionally bribe people in order to achieve your goals. Though you'll be helped in no small part by the fact that everyone who isn't you is about as smart as a bag of spinach, there's still a pretty good chance you'll end up accidentally saying the wrong thing to someone and having to restart your day. Number 6, Conker's Bad Fur Day. It's easy to forget Conker's lies amongst the other sordid antics that take place in the rest of the game, compared to an alien bursting out of someone's chest, surgery being done on a live animal, and a boss literally made of feces. You've a lot of stuff to distract you. In fact, you pull at least one spectacular fast one, as Conker manages to convince a weasel guard looking for a red squirrel, such as Conker, that Conker isn't a squirrel at all. In fact, our hero goes the extra mile, convincing this unfortunate guard that the description he has of a red squirrel, that is, red and with a bushy tail, isn't the description of a red squirrel at all, but rather an elephant. With this gambit, he manages to then convince the guard that he is an elephant, and thus can be let past, since the guards are looking for a squirrel. The best part of this, it works perfectly. Number 5, Psychonauts. The issue with popping into people's minds is that, on a practical level, very few are going to be able to process that you are a young boy with psychic powers, despite this being the entire premise of Psychonauts throughout. And thus, while your psychic teachers openly let you into their minds to train your skills, many other people you encounter aren't as aware that you aren't a fragment of their imagination. Indeed, much of the time you'll find yourself sort of playing along with whatever they've decided you are. And in the case of the deeply unstable conspiracy theorist Boyd, you actively lie about having various professions in order to blend in. At the end of the day, you are going to try and help these people to work out their issues, so it's not as though you're a monster for doing so, but it can still feel a little weird the first time you fake being a road worker in order to not get arrested in an imaginary world. Number 4, Bloodborne. Now, most of Bloodborne you spend being pretty honest in your intentions, because your intentions are to murder a whole host of blood-crazed beasts, and it's hard to dishonestly stab someone. But after you fight Ludwig the Accursed, former badass healing church hunter turned into a creepy horse-like monster, you're given the option to tell what is honestly kind of a whopper in order to do the right thing. Because if you approach Ludwig's cut-off head after beating him while in church garb, he'll ask you a kind of loaded question. Are my church hunters the honourable Spartans I hoped they would be? Now, you can tell him the truth and say no, because the majority of his fellow hunters have also become awful violent creatures, but if you want that sweet, holy moonlight sword as soon as you can, you're going to have to suck it up and lie to him. To be fair, it's not a cruel lie, because you're essentially giving a dying man peace of mind that his life and sacrifices were worth something before he passes away. It just might not actually be true, strictly speaking. Number 3, Town of Salem. A Town of Salem doesn't rely on just you lying, it relies on most players lying through their teeth at several points of the game. Because the crux of the game is to do so, as players put into the townspeople group are tasked with killing the Mafia members, and Mafia members are tasked with killing the townspeople. The townspeople are not told who the Mafia members are, and while the Mafia members know who's in their crew, they don't know what role each of the townspeople currently has. Phew. As such, everything quickly becomes about strategic lies, as someone is killed every day and you naturally don't want it to be you, meaning you naturally try and get specific people you distrust executed while saying basically anything you can to not be executed yourself. To add another layer of falsehoods to all of this, there are also neutral players who have their own personal goals given to them. As they have no specific allegiance to the townspeople or the Mafia, they're total wildcards who could get anyone killed just to achieve their goal. Number 2, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. Luigi is a precious soul, and easily the most likeable of the Mario assorted cast, but you also cannot deny that the dude's fatal flaw is that he's, well, often a bit of a huge coward. This comes to play in Superstar Saga when Luigi is tasked with finding a plant that will cure a sick Mario, which is supposed to exist in the same place as a terrifying, supposedly man-eating monster. When Luigi inevitably finds himself too afraid to go in, he and the player are forced into an absolutely wild situation, where you essentially have to force Luigi to lie to himself to go on, because the only way to get the green-clad brother into said cave is to have him be hypnotized into believing he's Mario. When Luigi is fully invested in his own lie, he proves hyper-competent, single-handedly recovering the plant after wading through countless dangers. Unfortunately, this doesn't seem to make him realise that his fear is the only thing holding him back, as after the hypnosis breaks, he's right back to being easily spooked. Number 1, Octodad. As far as lies go, saying you're a human when you are in fact a cephalopod is maybe the biggest one you can tell. And yet it's the entire premise of Octodad, a game that you wouldn't expect to work just as well as it does, both technically and in terms of its light-hearted and yet strangely compelling story. However, it's also undeniably a weird one, as even your kids and wife don't know you are an octopus, which raises several questions that frankly none of us ever should want answered. It is also a little sketchy on the part of dear Octodad, as while he clearly would do anything for his beloved family, he probably should have told them the truth a long while ago. Ultimately, you don't even get to reveal the secret that you've been concealing yourself, as your mortal enemy, the chef, instead reveals you've been lying about being human the whole time. Mercifully, you're such a good dad that nobody cares, although they might be nicer about you not wanting to go to the aquarium now. And there you are, the 10 video games that make you lie to win. But let us know your favourites down in the comments below. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, click that subscribe button as well as the little notification bell to be notified of any new videos coming your way. But for now, I have been Kirsten Ria from WhatCulture Gaming, and I'll see you in the next video.